those are not.
No,
That's not secured,
that's not secured.
and certainly not in the liquor cabinet. I'm just going off on lines. Let's not put it in the liquor cabinet. That's just itching for being not secure.
Hello, welcome to Aggressive Defensive Solutions podcast. Whiskey, lead, and steel. Feelings hurt while you wait. I'm Rick Sutton. Joining me today is Lee Curling, and today's subject was brought to us by one of the folks from W3. So thanks to them. And here's the big shout out. And what we're going to talk about today, I'm going to let you start off on this, Lee, is when we say that a firearm is secure, what do we mean?
It's a good question, and it's a good question because we've heard repeatedly in our local area a couple of shootings or firearm-related incidents that involved young children, that the firearm was secure. And I have come to the realization that secure means very different things to everybody.
Yes.
Because in one of those incidents, the gun was in mom's closet, sitting on the shelf. But the news media the weapon was secure. Secure from what? Obviously not the child that got the gun.
Yeah.
So it's another one that, we're not exactly sure where the gun was, but, if a child, 6, 7 years old, can get access to a gun,
Then
is that gun secure?
No.
I'm going to say no.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Now, we did have a discussion on a previous podcast that secure and how a firearm is kept may change throughout one's life.
Yep. Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. I'm
age of your children. Again, my wife and I were empty nesters now, right? There's no one in the house. My children are adults and old enough to buy guns themselves. So obviously secure is a different thing to me. But I certainly wouldn't say that if I left a gun sitting on a counter when when it's just my wife and I allow my niece and nephew to show up, that I would have called that gun secure.
No.
Right. So that's I guess the question becomes, what is secure, and I think what is secure is the question, and not necessarily secure enough.
Yeah.
Because we did discuss that before.
Yeah.
So, any thoughts on how you would define secure if you were gonna go on the news and say this gun was secure? Well, where would that line be for you?
So I'm going to cheat. And I'm going to use the in common usage from a legal standpoint. Right? So, for example, if you're driving down the road in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and I don't know about the People's Democratic Republic of Maryland or New Jersey or whatever that shit is, but in the Commonwealth of Virginia, if you are driving down the road and your firearm is easily recognizable for what it is in plain view, then it is not a concealed weapon. If your gun is on your front seat with your t-shirt laid across it, so it's not observed by common observation, it is considered a concealed weapon. Okay. If, however, your weapon is in the glove box or the center console, anything that has a mechanical device that must be manipulated to allow access to that space, that weapon is not a concealed weapon because it's a two-stage access to the weapon, right? So in that case, what the Commonwealth of Virginia says is that gun is not readily accessible as a concealed weapon and is therefore secured. So, following that logic, if you now in a house, I think it's a little bit different, but my answer would on that in the case of the house, if the gun is in a locked device, the closet that is locked, it's in my bedroom and my bedroom is locked, so nobody has immediate access to it. It's in a locked gun cabinet, or it's in a locked drawer, or it's in a locked box. And that's locked, obviously.
Locked.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I have a lock on that closet. Was the closet locked? Well, no. Well, then it's not secure, right? So if you have to engage, if you have to defeat a locking mechanism to then gain access to the space where the weapon is, I think the weapon is technically secured at that matter. I would say so.
Okay. I mean, and we know, right? Like California has.
Yeah.
But they have some explicit. You've got to have a trigger lock. You've got to have a mechanical lock on it.
Ammo can't be in the gun.
Right.
New York State has the same kind of shit.
And I've got friends in California that have safes, and they're like, yeah, well, I have to have a lock on a gun that's inside of a safe because in California.
Because I live in California.
You have to have this. This is the only way to secure it. The other doesn't count. But in Virginia, right, we don't actually have a specific storage requirement.
Because in Virginia, we love the Constitution. We love the Constitution so much that we designed the document that the Constitution copied. Because, again, at some point in time, this whole continent was Virginia. It's a much better place at the time. I'm just saying. It's a little bit of a rabbit hole.
That is. Let's hold that rabbit hole for some other podcast. But I think it's an interesting. We hear that, and I think it is something that we always need to be circumspect of when the news media says or reports a gun was secured. Then how did the child get a hold of it?
Yeah.
Right. I would say, a 16 or 17-year-old determined is going to defeat a huge number of locking devices. Mm-hmm. Right. So, but a much younger child, if your 5, 6, 7-year-old is getting a hold of your firearm,
yeah,
you're going to, in my humble opinion, you're gonna struggle to ever convince me that the gun was
properly secured.
Yeah. Right? Properly secured. And again, sitting on a shelf is not secured.
No.
Sitting in a nightstand is not secured.
No.
Right? But I'm not of the opinion that every gun everywhere always has to be secured based on your personal situation. Right?
Yeah.
Your children are at a different age, right? Mine are out of the house. I've got other family members that have really young children, and right at every stage of our life, we need to address things, right, based on who is in the house.
Yeah.
Right. Who is in the house? Who has access? Who has access?
Right? And that's all just part of being an intelligent, mature human being. So. And everybody gets spun up about guns. And I'm going to backtrack and we talk about the media doesn't know the first goddamn thing about guns. Right? So when the media goes, well, the gun was secured, I go, I already don't believe what you say because you're on TV and you're talking about guns and you're probably going to tell me that it has a 30 caliber clip or some silly bullshit like that, right?
But where did they get it from?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Did they get it
Soundbite,
from the right? Did they get it from something from law enforcement or something else? So where did they get it from?
Yes.
But the reality is, and my point on that is I take the word to be very circumspect.
Oh yeah.
When it's thrown out there, it is. Well, tell me how.
Yeah.
Tell me how. Was it in a biometric box that failed?
Yeah.
Right. There's some really cheap ones out there that have a tendency to have false positives.
Yeah.
Right. Or is it in some other mechanical device? That somehow failed.
Yeah.
Or was a parent say, well, it was secured because I put it out of reach because it was.
I put it up by the Playboys. I'll never find it, but they'll never find it.
They'll never find it by the Playboys.
By the Playboys. I put it in the liquor cabinet because the teenagers have never been in the liquor cabinet, right? So
that sounds like a good idea. Let's put the guns in the liquor cabinet.
So from a securing standpoint, and again, I think it's a sliding scale when you start looking at stuff. So for example, in all the time that I've been around guns, I've never heard of a gun jumping up off of a table or jumping out of a drawer and engaging anybody all by itself and doing it, right? So I've had people, family members who are not gun folks, who go, well, that gun that's in your house, it's not loaded, is it? Like, yeah. You keep a loaded gun in your house? I go, well, have you ever tried to bludgeon somebody with a Glock? They're not very heavy.
Because they're plastic.
Yeah, it's a terrible impact weapon, right? Right? So
because those plastic Glocks, they don't set off metal detectors.
That's exactly right. It's ceramic. Look, here. Remember in Die Hard 2?
Oh gosh.
When he goes, oh, it's a ceramic gun and it costs more than you make in a year. Dude, if you're a cop at Dulles and you make less than $350 a year, you got fucking issues, man. Even in 1987 dollars, that's bullshit. But anyway, rabbit hole there. But so when my little kids were little kids, before they learned how to shoot, before they learned what proper firearm etiquette was, the defensive gun in the house was kept in such a manner that if you picked it up and pulled the trigger, nothing would happen, right? Because the defensive gun in the house was a shotgun. And it was unsafe, not like a Joe Biden shotgun, like a real shotgun.
Not a double barrel?
Yeah, no.
Hey, I just told Jill to go out and go on the balcony, put on both barrels. Okay, now you have an unloaded shotgun. That'll scare them off.
Yeah, and you have... Yeah, and you're celebrating your birthday in Baghdad. Bullets are coming down someplace else. Anyway, so
sorry.
Yeah, so I kept the primary defensive gun for the house kept in such a manner that you'd have to pick it up and manually load it to get anything out of it. So if somebody accidentally picked it up, the chances of it being a problem are not. And then other than that, I carried my personal gun, and so my personal carry gun, right, is either on my person, which means it's secure because my kid's not getting it off of me, or it is, at the time I carried a gun that had a manual safety's engaged, and it's in a place where I can see it because the way my house is laid out, because I've lived, so it may not be secure in that I don't have my hands on it, but I know exactly where it is. Now, as my kids got older, and I'm sure the same thing happens with you with the empty nest syndrome or empty nest system, where, now the safe is not always locked. Now, all the guns that are in the house safe anyway, I have readily access to, right? But people get spun up about, well, you can't have guns in the house with the kids. True story, and you know this from having been here when I was a kid, living in the same house that I grew up in. This house, when I grew up in it, next to all of the doors was a loaded long gun.
Right.
And hanging from a nail next to all of the windows was a loaded handgun. I had loaded handguns in my room and loaded long guns in my room. Now the caveat to that was my stepfather, my mom, my stepfather, both police officers, and the renegade motorcycle gang had an open contract on my stepdad. And they'd already, tried to shoot him. So we had guns all over the farm. And when I walked the 110 yards down to the barn to take care of the horses, I took a gun with me because it was not out of the realm that I might need a gun. So there are people who don't understand that actually is a real thing in the world, and I've said this about guns for decades. If you train your people, your kids, your wife, your whomever, if you train them to understand how the weapon works and what it is, and that it's a tool, and then they treat it with the appropriate respect, and then you've taken all of the mystique and the mystery out of it, and they go, okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, and I had this conversation with police officers who would get wrapped around the action. Well, we gotta take this because it's a gun. I stopped this guy and he had a gun in the car, so I've got to secure the gun. It's no different than a skill saw. It's just a tool. Mm-hmm. Are you gonna rabidly seize his skill saw? Well, no, you couldn't kill me. Oh, you could definitely kill people with a skill saw. So, people get wrapped around the axle about it's a gun. A lot of it comes down to common sense, which of course is not a common virtue. But if you have little kids in your house, you shouldn't be leaving your guns laying around. Period. You shouldn't leave your knives laying around. You shouldn't leave anything that a kid can unintentionally hurt itself with because they're kids, right? And they go, oh, what's this? Bang, and they hit themselves in the face with it. How many times have your kids hit themselves with a hammer? Right? You can't even remember the number, right? I have girls and they've hit themselves with a hammer.
You know what? I would posit to say that the same person that would put a gun on the shelf in their closet that's readily accessible to their child is the same person that put covers over every electrical outlet to keep their child from sticking a.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right. But they look at things differently. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, but anyway, we've been at it.
Yeah.
I mean, this really shouldn't be a long. Should not have been a real long one. We went down a couple small rabbit holes. But
yeah, thank goodness.
But anyway, like I said, it was just a question that was asked. It was how do you define secured? And I think I think you hit the nail on the head, right? If it's got to be in some lockable container
or space,
right?
Yeah.
Or space, right? But again, well, a space is a container, right? I'm trying to boil it down to one sentence there, right? But right, whether the lock is over top of a trigger doesn't necessarily secure the gun from being taken, but it may prevent the trigger from being manipulated. But certainly not my go-to on locking up a gun, but and some type of lockable container, right? And your underwear drawer in with between the August and September Playboy issues and the third shelf up on your closet. Those are not.
No,
that's not secured.
That's not secured,
and certainly not in the liquor cabinet. I'm just going off on lines. Let's not put in the liquor cabinet. That's just itching for being not secure.
Well, yeah, probably.
I mean,
depends on how much time you spend in your liquor cabinet.
A couple more hours in the liquor cabinet.
All
right, guys. Hey, thanks for sticking with us. And we'll see you next week. I'm sure nobody listening to this got their feelings hurt because you understand what secure means.
Well, hopefully. So, hope you found it entertaining. I hope you got a chuckle out of this, and I hope you found it informative. Yeah, I guess nobody's feelings got their hurt.
I don't think so.
Is there anybody out there with a Canic?
We know you.
We know if you have a Canic. Be good, be safe. We'll see you guys later.
secure and how a firearm is kept may change throughout one's life.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? You know, the
Absolutely. I'm
age of your children. Again, you know, my wife and I were empty nesters now. Secure is a different thing to me.